I thought I was over Roman, but his voice on my friend's phone has me second-guessing everything. He says I'm in danger, but with the pack's safety at stake, who do I save first, myself or them? Thank you for your likes and subscriptions. You can leave your comments in the comments section. 𝐿𝐲𝐸 last chance to back down. Tristan spoke. We had driven to the town square. We were using a black Range Rover, which might I say was gorgeous. Bridget was driving and Tristan was sitting up front with her, which I had to admit, irked me. I felt like the kid in this situation. I mean, I was the youngest, but my wolf clearly wasn't okay with this arrangement. It didn't make it better that they were having their own private conversation up front. I had never felt so jealous in my life. Was it even normal? Was it even justified? That riddled me with guilt. Of course it wasn't. This was just an arrangement. Letting emotions get in the way was never part of the plan. It gets pretty hectic in there. Tristan spoke, bringing me out of my thoughts. He had turned to face me, and for a moment I just stared at his face. His perfectly sculpted face. Crystal? He asked. He had his brows furrowed in concern. Tristan frowned. That's it. I'm taking you home. You clearly aren't. No. I replied immediately. I'm fine. I want to help your grandmother. You really don't know what you're signing up for, do you? Tristan spoke warily. She's met Nana Francesca. I'm sure she has an idea. Bridget spoke, looking at me through the rearview mirror. My eyes widened. I wanted a distraction, but now that I thought about it, was I ready for Nana Francesca's extravagancies? Just call me if you need an out. I'll come up with an excuse for you. I've gotten good at that over the years. Tristan winked. I couldn't help but smile. He must have had to do this a lot with his grandmother in the past. I suddenly wanted to know more of his stories about his childhood. Had he been a rebel child? What kind of student was he? Who was his first girlfriend? How had he coped when his parents died? I wanted to ask about the drinking problem Kat had told me about. I didn't want emotions to come and interfere with this arrangement I had with him. I didn't want it to get messy, but I wanted to know him better. And I didn't know if that was even fair. We have a meeting in half an hour, T. Bridget spoke up. An irritated look crossed Tristan's face. He nodded. You gonna be okay going in there alone? Pretty sure she knows how to walk. Bridget rolled her eyes. Well, she can't seem to go anywhere without causing trouble. Tristan responded. I know it was meant to be a joke, but I couldn't help but think of the incriminating evidence in my bag right now. I needed to tell Tristan about Roman sooner than later. I knew that Bridget would find out about it when I told Tristan, but I didn't want her around when I actually said it. I sat forward. Tristan, could we talk later? I have something important to tell you. I realized I shouldn't have brought it up, judging by the way Tristan's facial expression changed. You can tell me now. What is it? Tristan pressed. No, I don't want you to be late for your meeting. I rushed the words out. Tristan stared at me for a little while. Okay, what is it about? I cast a nervous look at Bridget. She whipped around abruptly. Is it about me? She demanded. I was taken aback. I sputtered. Bridget narrowed her eyes at me. I raised my hands. I swear. Tristan sighed. Ease up, Bridge. Why would it be about you? Yeah. I wanted to add. Get over yourself. It's not like I was jealous of her and her perfect skin and the fact that she had a relationship with Tristan that I couldn't even come close to matching. Not that I should want to match their relationship. Maybe Bridget was just worried that I would tell Tristan about how she had talked to me yesterday. Wow, I didn't realize that was still on my mind. Well, why wouldn't it be? She had basically told me that I didn't care about Tristan. But I did. I always have. Tristan's eyes were still on me, staring in concern. You know what, it's really not that urgent. I spoke as I reached for the door handle and opened the door. We'll talk later. I quickly exited the vehicle, unaware that Tristan had too. He stepped closer to me. Crystal, are you sure you're okay? He asked. No. Roman contacted me. You know, the guy who had been spying on you for 10 years. Yeah. I spoke. I wanted to tell him. I really did. But now just didn't seem right. But when is the right time to tell someone such a thing? Probably right away. Why are you still holding on to this, Crystal? I'm fine. I told Tristan. Promise. It was true. Physically, I was a-okay. T, we're gonna be late. Bridget snapped. Tristan ignored her and placed a hand gently on my arm. I'm here, okay. Talk to me if something is wrong. I nodded. Way to guilt trip someone. Tristan suddenly moved his hand from my arm. I'll see you at the manor later. I nodded. That's right. I would be living in the manor now. I'd tell him then. Oh, and while you're here you should work on one of your rules. He spoke with a smirk that showed his dimples. I looked at him in confusion. The rules you came up with. My brothers are here, try to spend some time with them. Oh, those rules. Technically that one was yours. I told Tristan. Tristan shrugged. Fine, our rules. Ours. I kind of liked that. It showed a kind of partnership. And I didn't technically agree. Well, if you want me to follow yours, you have to follow mine. He spoke smugly. Real sneaky, Alpha, real sneaky. He shrugged. Fine. I spoke. I'll try. It's not like Joshua still hated me and Mikey. Well, boys never have crushes on me, and if by a miracle they do, it quickly disappears when they actually get to know that I'm actually very plain and obnoxiously ordinary. I mean, other than the fact that I'm half animal. Tristan's eyes suddenly flashed green. He winced as they returned to normal. Gotta go. He spoke before going back into the car. I watched them drive away inside. I clutched my purse and thought of the phone of Roman. Stop it, Crystal. I quickly decided to head up the steps before I talked myself into doing something stupid. I already did though by not telling Tristan right then and there what had happened. But it just didn't feel like the right time. Sounds stupid, but it just didn't. I was pulled out of my thoughts when I walked into the town hall, right into a flurry of activity. People moving back and forth carrying tables, chairs, you name it. I saw a team working on the sound system in one corner, and in another people putting up lights. Everything might have looked chaotic at first glance, but I saw the cohesiveness. That's one thing I liked about pack mentality actually, they knew how to perfect the art of teamwork. I looked on in wonder. I had forgotten how important the AAP ball was. I mean, Roman hadn't really been excited about it. He was happy. But Roman usually made a point of not letting himself get too excited about things because, well, he usually got disappointed in the end. Maybe that had been his mindset when he had texted me last night. I was the one person who wasn't supposed to let him down. Did I say purple? I heard a familiar voice yell. No. Violet, I said Violet. I saw Nana Francesca quite literally standing in the middle of the circus show yelling at some poor girl. Actually, the poor girl was May. Oh my. I immediately cringed, feeling horrible for her. I definitely wouldn't want to be her. It was beyond me why Nana Francesca was yelling at her, but my immediate instinct was to go over there and help in any way I could. After all, I quite literally owed May my life. Even if I was frightened to death of Nana Francesca. I started to head towards the two when I yelled as I felt something hit my head, knocking me to the floor. Oh crap. I heard someone yell. The first thing I saw was an unusually high stack of chairs. The next thing I saw was Michael Melrose looking down at me. Oh crap, crap, crap. Crystal, I'm so sorry. He spoke. I stared at him, stunned. I wasn't in any pain or anything, just in shock really. What's going on? Nice going, Mikey. I heard someone else who sounded like Joshua speak, and the next thing I knew his face was above me as well. You okay? He asked. I nodded. I'm fine. Joshua stretched out a hand for me and pulled me to my feet. Crystal, I am so sorry. Mikey continued. I didn't see where I was going and oh gosh, are you sure you're okay? Joshua rolled his eyes at his brother. Honestly, Michael, I'm fine. I told him, giving him a reassuring smile, because he honestly looked about ready to pop a vein. I realized the whole room had gone quiet. I looked around and found that everyone's eyes were on me. What a way to make an entrance. I waved awkwardly. All good here. I spoke, wishing everyone would just go back to what they had been doing before. Who hurt the Luna? A sharp voice screamed. Oh no. Nana Francesca came bustling through. Who has the audacity to attack the Luna? She yelled again. No, please God, no. I'm fine, really, I spoke hurriedly, wanting her to just stop making a scene already. But she must not have heard me because her eyes were darting around viciously, looking at everyone in accusation. I rushed forward to her. Nana Francesca, she was still looking around furiously. Might I remind you all that hurting your Luna is an act of treason and treason is punishable by death. Just because she's a halfling, doesn't mean she doesn't deserve every ounce of your respect, you pathetic small-minded. Nana Michael stepped forward. Not now, dear. She waved him off. Now, who will we be burning at the stake for disrespecting our Luna? She demanded, narrowing her eyes at everyone. Nana. Joshua snickered and threw his arm around Michael's shoulder. That would be your grandson. Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐼 turned to look at Michael sharply. Michael's face had gone pink and he scratched the back of his head. It was an accident, I swear. He spoke quickly. Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻 looked disappointed at the lack of bloodshed. Wait, werewolves didn't really burn people at the stake, did they? That sounded kind of Salem witchy. False alarm, people, get back to work. She told everyone in resignation. She walked up to me and placed both her hands on either side of my face. Oh dear, I am glad you could make it after rudely standing me up yesterday. I furrowed my brows. We were attacked by rogue Van Cliff wolves. I told her. I would have thought she would have known that. Oh, I heard. She spoke dismissively. When I was your age, other packs would send wolves after me all the time. I was something of a gem. She threw her scarf back with a smug look on her face. They always tried to get to me in order to get to Trevor. You know the saying. If you want to destroy a king, you take down his queen. Michael and Joshua chorused in a teasing tone. Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻 gave them a proud smile and patted Josh on the cheek. That's right. You boys are learning more and more from me each day. Keep it up and you'll be the exceptional, upstanding gentle wolves this pack needs. She stopped in front of Michael and narrowed her eyes. Gentle wolves who don't knock young ladies over. Michael's cheeks tinted pink. Nana. He grumbled. It wasn't, but Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻 was already looking around for something. Where is that girl? She spoke to herself. Her name is May Nana. Joshua spoke. I noticed for that he was dressed extremely casually in a navy blue t-shirt with khaki shorts. Michael wore the same khaki shorts except his t-shirt was gray and had the words, "Wi-Fi is in the air" printed on it in white. And don't you think you should ease up on her? Joshua asked. Nonsense. How will she be able to carry my god-grandchildren and take care of my godson if she can't handle a few simple orders? Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻 asked. Are god-grandchildren even a thing? Michael asked, looking confused. You asked her to get you your favorite sushi from Japan for lunch. Joshua told her. Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻 just stared as if she didn't see the problem. Joshua sighed. She's not your PA, Nana. He told her slowly. Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻 waved him off. Oh please, all apprentices are basically overqualified personal assistants. Hey, Joshua yelled. Michael snickered, but then his eyes landed on me. Except you, of course. He spoke quickly. Thanks. I spoke with a small smile. Yeah, Mikey, thanks. Joshua narrowed his eyes at his brother. Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻 shook her head at her grandsons. Strange boys. She whispered in my ear before placing a hand over my shoulder and ushering me away. Come, darling, we have much to do. What exactly will I be doing? I asked Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻. Oh, darling. You'll be doing the best part of the job, bossing people around. She smiled slyly. Everyone thinks the alpha is the one everyone listens to, but it's really the Luna. She spoke, stopping in front of three men who were doing something with a bunch of wires. Tell them to jump. She told me. I looked at her in confusion. She nodded in encouragement. She wasn't kidding, was she? I turned to look at the men and gave them an apologetic look. A jump. The three men complied and each jumped. Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻 looked satisfied. You can tell them to do whatever you want. Try something else. She encouraged me. Maybe later. Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻 rolled her eyes. Boring. She placed her hand around my shoulder as well and started leading me away from the three confused men. So you wanted me here to just boss people around? I asked Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻. She shrugged. Well, you have to learn how. To be honest, sweetheart, you're something of a pushover. Well, that wasn't offensive at all. I looked around at the already well-oiled machine. Everything seems to be going well, so maybe I can kind of do some background work instead. This pack already didn't like me. I didn't want to make it worse by being that Luna. I have a feeling I wouldn't even be good at it or do it right for that matter. I was a background kind of girl, really. I couldn't go prancing around like an iron Luna. Lest someone inevitably decides to call me out on my act. Like Raphael had yesterday. If he could do that in front of Tristan, who knows what mutiny could happen here without him. Before Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻 could say anything else, May returned. She held a clipboard in one hand and her phone in the other. Luna. She nodded. Where have you been? Nana 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻 demanded. 𝐿𝐻𝐬 gestured to her phone. Oh, Tristan called, he wanted me. You know your Luna was almost killed in the time that you decided to go and chat on your phone. Nana Francesca spoke dramatically. May's eyes widened and she turned to look at me. I really wasn't. I rushed out the words quickly. Michael it was horrendous. Nana Francesca continued. Oh, my gosh. It's a good thing I was there. She put a hand on my shoulder as if she had just saved my life. I subtly shook my head at May. She just had an exhausted look on her face as if she was used to it. My apologies, Lady Melrose. She spoke, sounding defeated. Oh well, no matter. She didn't die. This time. I looked at Nana Francesca incredulously. I looked at May, who just looked resigned. Oh, are those violet tablecloths? She yelled as her eyes followed someone. I said I wanted purple. You said violet, Lady Melrose. May told her. Excuse me, young lady, I think I can remember what words came out of my mouth. She snapped. Excuse me, dear. She told me sweetly before marching away. I looked at May. Is this how she always all the time? May sighed. She gave me a small smile. How are you? There was a faint scar on her forehead and another faint scratch on her forearm. Shouldn't I be asking you that? I'm fine. She spoke with a small smile. No need to worry. I nodded. I never got the chance to thank you for what you did yesterday. You saved our lives. Don't mention it. It's my job. She shrugged. Honestly, I did feel guilty more than ever. May would never have had to risk her life if those wolves hadn't come for me. Are there any updates with them rogues? May looked at me in confusion. Didn't you talk to Tristan? Was there something to talk about? No, is there any, May? May winced. Nana Francesca was gesturing wildly at something. Have you seen this? I could just die. May sighed. She forced a smile at me. I'll see you around, Luna. Was there something Tristan hadn't told me about the rogues? I mean, it's not like I had asked. I was a bit preoccupied. But then again, wasn't he obliged to tell me if there had been a development? I deserved to know. Especially if it could have something to do with my mother. My mother. I'll come back for you, Crystal. Is that why you never made it back for me? Are you in trouble, Mom? I got a sick feeling. It was just a scent, Crystal. Maybe it was nothing. Like Uncle Victor said, maybe it wasn't a conspiracy like I wanted it to be. Maybe I was looking for an excuse to forgive her for abandoning me. Or maybe it was something. I hadn't imagined Roman texting me, had I? And yet you still haven't told Tristan. A voice told me. But I would. I just needed to stop thinking too much about all this. That's why I was here, right? To distract myself. Your spy ex-boyfriend contacted you. And you want to distract yourself. Shut up, voice in my head. When did you get so patronizing anyway? I spotted Joshua walking towards the stage. Hello, distraction. Tristan did say I should try to befriend his brothers. I rushed after him. A few people stopped to bow at me and I just smiled and nodded in acknowledgement. Hey, I called. Joshua looked down at me. He was already on top of the stage. I noticed he was carrying a toolbox. Hey, he responded, looking unsure. Cool if I hang here? I asked. Grandma driven you crazy already? He asked with a smirk. I know she's a lot, but she usually means well. In her own way. I smiled. Yeah. What are you up to? Joshua gave me a sort of confused look. Nana wanted me to make sure the stage is stable. An incident occurred like a million years ago one time, and now we have to make sure the stage is alright all the time before a big event. To be honest, I was only partially listening to Joshua. Roman had been on this very stage 2 years ago during his ball. Tristan had called out his name and he has walked up to receive the official AAP badge. I remember he had looked as sure and confident as he always did. And so handsome. But, to be honest, he wasn't the one I had been looking at that night. Tristan looked handsome too that night. He had a date too, Jasmine Reese of the pack. She wore a shimmery silver dress that made her look like a glamorous model straight out of The Great Gatsby. I remember I had kept staring at them that night. I wouldn't say I was jealous. Maybe a little. I had a feeling Roman had noticed I wasn't 100% there that night, and it had honestly made me so guilty. I was supposed to be celebrating him, and there I had been staring at Tristan. Can I help? I asked Joshua, quickly pushing away thoughts of the past. Sure. Joshua responded. You can hand me a hammer. I think the plank over here is weak. Got it. I responded, quickly going to the took box and taking out a hammer with a red handle. I walked back to the stage and gave it to Joshua. He took the hammer and just stared at me for a while. What? I asked. I didn't accidentally walk up to the wrong twin, did I? No. I wasn't that out of it. Nothing. Joshua responded. I just thought you'd still be mad at me. Mad at you? Oh, that. I honestly had too much going on to even remember that Joshua Melrose had pissed me off by looking into my file. Why had I been so mad, you might wonder? Well, I can only guess what had been in that file. But if my guesses were right, there was information about my mom, which Joshua had pretty much already confirmed. And there was information about the trial and my relationship with Roman. The whole trial had been a deep invasion of privacy. A traumatizing experience. Uncle Victor had tried to protect me from as much as he could, but I was the one who was being asked if Roman had used sex or anything else to manipulate me into being his accomplice. After all, he was older. That's what infuriated me the most. Roman might have been older, but he was still a kid. Why did everyone forget that? And I was going to report that kid. That guilty spy of a kid. Oro. We went through a near-death experience together. Our second one, actually. I tried to force a smile, but it actually really wasn't funny. Joshua almost died. Again. Because of me. I guess you're right. He gave me a wry smile. I noticed that he actually looked better. Well, at least he wasn't limping anymore. Joshua crouched down. But I really am sorry, Crystal. I was just trying to help T out. I nodded. I understand. But Josh, you know I would never hurt Tristan, right? Joshua didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the hammer. For the longest time, it's just been the three of us. I mean, Nana, Nita, Pete, May and Bridge are all family, but Joshua took in a deep breath. Tristan did that too. I always suspected it was him stopping himself from revealing something too personal. T always puts everyone else first. Joshua finally continued. I mean, it's his job as alpha, but I just want to have his back too sometimes. Hence making sure his mate isn't some traitor. I concluded. Joshua nodded. I was misguided and I'm sorry for that. But you're not sorry for trying to protect your brother. I added. Joshua gave me an apologetic look but nodded nonetheless. I get it. Your brother is his great. I know my words were underwhelming when describing your mate. I knew Tristan was more than great. More than I deserved anyway. Speaking of your brothers, I started changing the topic. Is Michael ever going to stop acting weird around me? I mean, we'll be living together and I don't want things to be awkward. Oh, Joshua smiled to himself. Give him some time. I guess he's still a little embarrassed. It's not every day that you have a crush on someone and she turns out to be your brother's mate. Joshua seemed to be enjoying this too much and I kind of felt bad for Michael. How long has Michael even had a crush on me? I asked. It didn't even add up. I had never even talked much to the Melrose twins before recently. I think that's a conversation for you to have with him. He was already mad that I told you about it. I guess I would have to talk to Michael sooner than later. Just to clear the air. I wanted us to be friends, or at least friendly, for Tristan's sake. Hey, I've been meaning to ask you something, actually. I spoke as I remembered something about yesterday. Do you and Michael open your minds to each other? Because yesterday when May told you to call Michael, you just shut your eyes. Joshua rose his brows at me. What? You don't know. Don't know what? Joshua sat on the edge of the stage so that his legs were dangling. Some werewolf twins are born with an empathetic or telepathic link. Sometimes both, like with Mikey and I. Wait, what? So you two can feel everything the other feels. And you can hear each other's thoughts all the time. Kat was the closest thing I had to a sister, and I knew for a fact I wouldn't want her in my head all the time at all. Well, not really. Joshua spoke. I mean, when we were kids, yeah, we couldn't really control it, but we learned over time. We can usually keep things from each other. Unless the emotion is, too overwhelming, I guess. Like the day I got attacked, he felt it but couldn't quite comprehend where I was because of the pain. Blessing and a curse. Did make sense. When Joshua was hurt, I would sometimes see Michael flinch when Joshua did. And it would explain why Joshua would blush when Michael spoke to me sometimes. Doesn't that kind of make relationships awkward? I asked Joshua. He scratched the back of his head. Yeah. There were so many times when we would think we liked the same girl, but turns out we were just feeding off the other's emotions. Let's just say it took a lot of practice to know the difference and become individuals. Huh. That was really interesting. I had so many questions. But before I could even ask one, I heard someone clear their throat. I turned to see B with her hands folded across her chest. "Oh hey baby," Joshua greeted, jumping off the stage and walking towards her. He placed a kiss on her cheek. B's eyes were on me, not looking friendly at all. I guess near-death experiences didn't necessarily equate to friendship for everyone. "I thought you said you weren't coming," Joshua told her. "Changed my mind." B spoke. "You said you'd help me with my car, remember?" "Oh, so that's the only reason you're here? To take advantage of my free services?" Joshua asked, humor in his voice. "I'll pay you in kind," B told him, trailing her hands up his chest. I averted my eyes awkwardly. Weren't they mad at each other just yesterday? Right. Joshua grinned at her. "Let me just grab my stuff." Joshua rushed off, leaving me with B, whose glare just became more intense. I knew that look too well. She was about to start something and I honestly wasn't in the mood. I was about to walk away when she began to speak. "Joshua isn't your friend, you know." Too late. I turned back to face her. "I know you went through 2 traumatic experiences together, but that doesn't mean anything, especially since you're the one who caused them. Goodness, where was Nana Francesca when I needed her?" "Listen B, I don't want trouble," I told her. She stepped forward. "All you are is trouble, Halfling." She spoke in a low voice. That's right. This wasn't school and I was the Luna now. She couldn't exactly yell at me in public anymore. That made me confident enough to do something I had never done before. Talk back to Beatrice Gonzalez. "What have I ever done to you anyway?" I asked, stepping forward. I kept my voice low as well. Even though I was taking a stand for once in my life, I didn't want to cause a scene. I remembered what Andre had said yesterday, about B and Courtney having a history with Halflings. "Why do you hate me so much?" I continued. "Because Kat chose to be my friend instead of yours." I had always known Kat's friendship with B and Courtney ended because Kat ditched them when they made her pick between us. But even that couldn't be reason enough for all that hatred. This wasn't some kitsch teenage movie. "You better back off," B told me, narrowing her eyes, but I wasn't scared. "Not until you tell me why exactly you and Courtney are such witches to me. Honestly, what have I ever done to you two to make you hate me so much?" B scoffed. "You think because you're the Luna now you're hot stuff, huh?" She let out a humorless laugh. "I'm on to you, Swan. You might have convinced Josh that you're innocent, but I see right through your BS. And I'm going to find out what your endgame is." Great. Joshua had passed his paranoia onto his girlfriend. Endgame. I honestly didn't know what to say anymore. I was so tired to the accusations. "You think I buy it for 1 second that your traitor boyfriend gets caught and now you're the Luna? So you think I made Tristan imprint on me?" I asked. Honestly, the conspiracy theories were getting old. "Be a smartass all you want." She spat at me. "But I saw you talk to that Van Cliff Wolf and I know not to trust you." She spun around and stormed off. I sighed. I had enough going on to worry about B. Gonzalez gunning for me. 33 Tristan. "What are the 4 pillars of the Silvercrest pack?" she asked in a smooth voice. I opened my eyes. She was seated across me, still in the same form with her knees folded beneath her and her back straight. "No peeking, T." She spoke in a sing-song voice. I quickly shut my eyes. The 4 pillars." I racked my brain. "Loyalty, integrity, cooperation, and peace and harmony." She finished for me. "Yeah, exactly." I responded like I had known it all along. I heard my mother sigh. I opened my eyes and saw her looking at me in a patronizing way. "I swear I knew it, Mom. I just needed a minute to think." I muttered the last part and looked at the ground. My legs were beginning to hurt from putting all my weight on them. "Get up, T." She spoke as she began to rise herself. I felt relieved that I would actually get to stretch out my legs after what must have been 40 minutes in the same position. "You haven't been studying with Nita, have you?" she asked seriously. I hated when she used that tone. It meant serious Mum was around. But then again, serious Mum always showed up when we came down here to train. "I have." I spoke defensively. "Really? Because she says you haven't been paying attention." I looked at my bare feet. "It's a lot to remember, Mum. Pick up your staff, Tristan." She spoke. I almost groaned out loud. Not this again. I looked behind me at the wooden staff on the floor. I hesitantly picked it up and turned around to see my mother had picked up her own. Without warning, she swung at me. Quickly jumped back. The The 4 pillars of the pack, Tristan. She demanded before swinging again. This time I blocked it with my own staff before it could hit my face. Loyalty. I groaned as I used all my strength to fend off her staff. Integrity. Her staff came for my right arm and I quickly spun and stopped it. Cooperation. This time her staff came for my stomach area and I had to use both my hands to align my staff to block the attack. And whoa! The staff was swiped underneath me and sent me falling to the ground. Dang it! I hadn't watched for my feet. I landed on my back on the purple padded mat. Peace and harmony. My mother spoke sternly as her face appeared above mine. Ow! I yelled at her as I rubbed the back of my head. Her face softened. She got on one knee before me. Tristan, the pain you feel right now is temporary. It will go away and then your body will be at peace and in harmony again. Are you really using my pain right now to prove a point? I asked angrily. She gave me a small smile. Many alphas forget that last one too. But a pack needs to feel peace and harmony at least once. When there is peace and harmony, everything works at its optimum level and everyone is safe. An absence of these 2 very important things can mean danger. She put her staff down and took my arm, pulling us both onto our feet. You need to understand that the pain you feel now will disappear, and you won't have that grouchy look on your face anymore. She teased. She put her hand on my cheek. You need to have experienced peace and harmony to know what life would be like without it. You need to treasure it and list it among one of your necessities in life. That way when someone threatens to steal it away from you, you're able to fight for it with whatever you have. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? She asked. I huffed. No. Just stop speaking in riddles and tell me. She frowned. I mean, you should value peace and harmony in this pack. When you become alpha, you'll need to treat it as a basic human right for all your pack members. Each and every one of them. And when someone threatens that peace, you need to go for them with everything you have. I huffed. Mom, what's the point of all this? I'm not even close to becoming the alpha. But you will one day, baby. And I want you to know that this title is... She stopped when we heard the front door open. My father stuck his head into the room. Hey. He spoke as he walked in. Busy training, I see. Shoes, honey. My mum reminded him as he stepped onto the mat. Oh, right, sorry. He spoke before taking off his shoes. Mum just knocked me over again. I snitched. My father looked at my mother with a frightened look on his face. My mother rolled her eyes. He's exaggerating. Tell that to the bump on the back of my head. I replied. Okay. My father spoke, putting a hand on my shoulder. Why don't you go play with the twins? They've been asking about you. I groaned. Do I have to? My father placed his hand on my shoulder. Yes. He responded. Yesterday they snuck into my room and got gum in my hair. I yelled in outrage. To be fair, they just wanted to sleep with their big brother. It's not their fault they didn't know not to sleep with gum in their mouths. My mother spoke as she picked up both her staff and mine and set them in the rack. She frowned and looked up at my dad. We should actually discourage that as soon as possible. What if one of them choked? My money would be on Mikey. The kid puts anything and everything in his mouth that seems edible. He let out a small laugh but immediately shut up when my mother glared at him. He cleared his throat. Plus, I am loving the new look, champ. It makes you look very grown up. I'm sure Lydia will like it. He winked at me. I felt my face getting warmer and I pushed my dad's hand away from me. Dad, stop it. I muttered. Oh, am I mistaken? Was it Bridget you had a crush on? He continued. Dad. I yelled. He's only 11, Francis. Way too young for girlfriends. My mother spoke seriously. She had a hard look on her face. Right. Serious mom doesn't do jokes. You better get going, champ. Anita made snickerdoodles. My dad told me. Sugar. Serious mom sounded outraged. Escape while you can. My dad whispered to me with a wink, slightly pushing me to the door. I ran quickly, but when I was out the door I didn't leave. Instead I leaned against it, pressing my ear against it just in time to hear serious mom begin to speak. You're too soft on him. Well, you're too tough on him. My father argued. Seriously. Barring again. I thought we talked about that. Oh no, Dad sounded mad. Dad never gets mad. He needs to be trained. He needs to be strong. What he needs to be is a kid. There was a pause. Well, that's not a luxury we can afford. We're in the midst of a war. A war that we have under control. They attacked the 𝐊𝐲𝐬𝐩 pack. Pack under my protection. She yelled. I know 𝐊𝐲𝐬𝐳, he's not a fool. He's making us think we're winning while doing all these little things to provoke me. He's trying to catch me off guard. Trying to make me do something stupid. Another pause. I heard shuffling. You said you wouldn't become your father. What's that supposed to mean? It means he turned you into a paranoid war machine and you're trying to do the same to Tristan. This time I heard footsteps. I quickly turned and ran off. I sat up abruptly and turned immediately, saw Bridget sitting on the couch in the back of the room. She had a file open and different printed items scattered in front of her. She frowned. Sorry. I was going to let you get a few more minutes of sleep, but Captain Park will chew you out if she gets here and finds you asleep. And I figured you've had enough of people yelling at you for one day. Yeah, thanks. My head was pounding. I ran a hand down my face and tilted my head from side to side, trying to get the no out. Word to the wise, don't wall asleep in the office chair anymore. Who was I kidding? It was definitely going to happen again. And even though I felt tempted to shut my eyes again, Bridget was right. The last thing I needed was a repeat of what had happened earlier during our council briefing. I didn't think it was possible for grown people to cause so much chaos, all of them acting without order. It was like they were all trying to compete on who could yell the loudest. Hence my headache. I stood up and flinched slightly. Bridget shook her head. Will you just take a stupid painkiller already? She snapped as she crossed something off on the paper she was looking at. I looked up at her. She knew my head felt like it was about to split open because of the mind link, but we didn't share an empathy link, so I don't know exactly why she was complaining so much. Especially since she had basically instigated the shouting match that had occurred during the council meeting. Hey, you weren't going to put Roger in his place, so I took over. She spoke and I realized she had read my mind. Will you stay out of my head? I'm right here next to you. I snapped. It's not like there's anything new in there. She scoffed. Crystal, how will I keep her safe? Why are rogues after her? How will she fare with living in the manor? Crystal, this, should I have left her with my grandmother, Crystal the bridge? I growled. I could feel her going deeper in my mind. And she stopped. I felt her presence in my mind recede. She was quiet for a little while before frowning at me. Your parents. I looked away from her. I heard her sigh. She put down the pen she was using and stood up before walking towards me. She grabbed me by my arm, forcing me to turn and face her. I thought the nightmares stopped. It's no big deal. I told her, wishing she would just drop it. It is to me. She spoke in a soft voice which she hardly ever used. You were talking in your sleep again. I sighed, knowing she wouldn't let it go. I'm losing control, Bridge. I admitted. I was an alpha, I wasn't allowed to be vulnerable. So I built my defenses up all the time. Built up concrete walls and lined them with barbed wire like my mother taught me, so that no one would be able to sneak in and break me. I was the alpha. I was supposed to appear strong and capable for my people. But then there was Bridget, who had seen me in more embarrassing moments than I would like to admit. Besides, she was constantly in my head. Even if I tried to hide that part of myself from her, she would know something was off. I think Roger was right. Take that back. Roger is never right. She spoke dead seriously before cracking a smile. I smiled as well in spite of myself. Well, he had a point when he said that I'm not at my peak. I'm letting things slip through the cracks, and I feel like I should have solved this case already. And it's driving me crazy. Bridget sighed. Hey, ease up on yourself, this isn't an easy case. I can't. I told her in frustration, wishing she would just get it. I showed her my thoughts the night we found out my mother had died. How my father had literally become inactive, weak, broken. He couldn't even get out of bed. I showed her how scared my brothers had been. How I had to take over. I showed her how I had to step up and leave to fight on the front lines where my mother had been. How that had been a mistake. Because even if I had been victorious, an enemy wolf followed me back to Silvercrest territory, back to the manor. I showed her the moment I found my father's body in his room. He didn't stand a chance. All because I had let someone slip through the cracks. All because I hadn't been as careful as I should have been. Bridget looked up at me when I was done. Her eyes were glossy. That's not fair. And you know it, she spoke harshly. I showed her my fears now. What if I let something else slip through the cracks? What if it hurt Crystal? My brothers? Pete? Or even her? I couldn't lose someone else I cared about. Bridget put her hand on my shoulder and pulled me closer. Hey, look at me. What if I was really going to be the downfall of this pack like Roger insisted on reminding me all the time? What if I hurt my pack? The pack I was supposed to keep safe and serve. See, look at me. She ordered. I forced myself to meet her blue eyes. We're gonna figure this out, okay? I was about to say something when a voice interrupted us. Finally. I had barely heard the door open. Bridget stepped away from me and turned to look at Captain Park, who in with Peter and Raphael behind her. Sorry we're late, we had to contain Roger and stop him from starting a mini uprising during the council meeting. I know what Bridget was doing, distracting Captain Park for a moment while I collected myself. I tried to compose myself and push everything back. This wasn't the time or place to let my emotions run wild. I have a job to do. A duty to my pack. I stepped forward and took over. Any progress with the interrogations? I asked Captain Park. No, Alpha, they still aren't giving up any information. She spoke. She gave me a strange look and I knew she could tell I wasn't okay. But as I said, I didn't have time to consider my mental state. I was worried about the hostages we were currently holding in the basement. We've had them locked up with no food or water for hours, separate in the dark. But I didn't exactly expect that to break them. They're Van Cleefs. I know how resilient they can be. They were trained to be that way. And they were all still in their wolf forms. None of them had shifted back yet, and I could only assume they were trying to protect their identities. I say we assume what we need to assume for now. Bridget spoke. They snuck into Silvercrest territory and aggressively tried to seek out pack members, including the Luna and the Alpha's brother. They're a danger, a threat. We should handle them likewise in a hostile manner. I don't know why no one is saying this, but it isn't even a question. Raphael yelled. They're Van Cleefs, we handle them like we would have handled them during the war. I shut my eyes and winced. Whenever I thought of the wall, I saw glimpses of blood, lifeless bodies, flesh. Okay, go ahead and kill the prisoners. Bridget spoke. Then we would have achieved exactly nothing. I'm just saying we need to do what needs to be done. The public won't like that we're keeping Van Cleefs here in Silvercrest, alive for that matter. I winced at his loud tone. Are all my meetings today going to involve people yelling my ear off? Could everyone take a seat so that we start this meeting off the right way? I growled. That sounds like something civilized people would do. She spoke, giving Raphael a hard look before taking the chair right across my desk. Bridget went back to the couch she was on. Peter just went to lean against the wall. I rose my brows at him. If I sit down, I will fall asleep. He spoke. I couldn't blame him. Among the three of us, we had probably gotten a max of 2 hours of sleep, and it was clearly taking a toll on us all. Captain. I nodded at her to give us an official briefing. She didn't even look at the file she had in front of her. As I said before, Alpha, nothing has changed. The captives are still in their wolf forms, kept isolated in separate cells, being weakened with wolfsbane as you instructed. We're still waiting for at least one of them to change back so that we can question them. They're still fighting though. You gotta admire the resilience of the Eclipse pack. No need to tell me. 𝐿𝐲 Van Cleef basically treated all his pack members as soldiers and subjected them to the most intense training, no matter their age. If there's one thing he hated, it was weakness. They won't last. I spoke. I had heard a sick story about how 𝐿𝐲 tried to make his soldiers immune to wolfsbane by giving it to them in small doses. It was impossible to develop immunity, but I guess it helped them develop some sort of resistance. But even the strongest wolf wouldn't be able to withstand for too long. One of them was bound to break soon. Raphael, who had remained standing in front of my desk, shook his head at me. I can't believe you still refuse to open your eyes, Tristan. We don't need to interrogate them. We know what's going on here. Oh, do tell. Bridget spoke sarcastically. Raph ignored her and looked at me and Captain Park. They didn't hurt or try to hurt the Luna. That doesn't seem suspicious to you guys? Raphael asked. Here we go again. I glared at him. Raph, my mate isn't a traitor. She didn't even know those rogues. I told him sternly. Fine. But what if they knew her? Raphael argued. It did seem like they recognized her to be a Van Cleef from both your brother's and BA's statements. Captain Park spoke. I clenched my fists. What was wrong with these people in accusing Crystal? Here is a possibility. Peter spoke up quickly. The Van Cleef wolves are basically an exiled pack. In this region especially, it's hard for them to find a pack willing to give them refuge. Maybe they recognized Crystal as a 𝐻𝐸 and hoped she would help them find membership in the Silvercrest pack. How would they know Crystal was a 𝐻𝐸? Captain Park argued. With her halfling nature, sometimes you can't even tell she has a werewolf side. So there must be a mole within the pack. I didn't realize how much I had been considering it until I said the words. That's a pretty serious accusation. Peter spoke warily. Everyone else looked as shocked as he did. Werewolves aren't like humans, packs are basically built on loyalty, so betrayal is a pretty big deal. I leaned forward. I know the Silvercrest pack is supposed to be united and loyal to each other. But I won't sit back and ignore the fact that my borders are airtight. No one can get in or out without someone knowing about it. There've been 2 instances now where they've snuck in and gone for 2 people close to me. Coincidence? I don't think so. So you're saying you think the 2 attacks are connected? Captain Park asked. I looked at her in confusion. Don't you? She had taught me everything I knew. I thought this would be as obvious to her. Captain Park pursed her lips, looking thoughtful. I think making assumptions won't help us solve anything. We need to interrogate the prisoners. Well, we can't do that until they shift back now, can we? Raphael asked impatiently. I rolled my eyes, beginning to get impatient. If you have something to say, Raph, say it. Fine. Raph spoke as he took a step forward. I think you're being a terrible alpha. Before I could even react, Bridget stood up and stepped forward, outstretching her hand to Raphael. Okay, Raph, no, let him speak. I spoke, looking Raphael right in the eye. Roger had already pissed me off today, honestly. At this point I just needed an excuse to let it all out. But of course that wouldn't be right. Still, even if I knew that what Raphael was about to say was going to anger me, I needed him to get it off his chest. I knew Raphael well enough to know that if he bottled things up, it would turn to rage and resentment. I needed all my guys on my side now more than ever. Thank you. Raphael smirked. This won't be good. Peter muttered with a sigh. It's obvious, Tristan. Raphael spoke, leaning forward on my desk. You let a 𝐻𝐸 infiltrate our pack, and now her people are coming in after her. You're getting soft. The Tristan I fought in the war with would have no problem torturing those freaking 𝐻𝐸s into shifting back. How long do you think it will be until more come in after them? This could be an elaborate 𝐻𝐸 uprising and you can't see it because you're whipped. And you're paranoid. Must be the PTSD from the war. Bridget spoke, stepping forward. The 𝐻𝐸s were destroyed. Raphael turned to glare at her. He then gave her a sick smile. I'm surprised, Bridge. I thought you'd be on my side with this one. Sorry, I am not a crazy conspiracy theorist. She spoke with a fake smile. Raphael scoffed. This whole, I protect my alpha at all costs act would be admirable if everyone didn't know that the only reason you got this job is because you two are screwing. I could feel Bridget's temper soar through the roof. Bridge and I had hooked up one time. I made the mistake of telling Raphael that if there's one thing Bridget hated, it was when people assumed she got where she did because of her sexuality. I heard her growl. I quickly got up and I knew Peter was thinking the same thing. He held Raphael back and I took Bridget and held her back before she could pounce. Enough. I yelled, letting go of Bridget and getting in between the two. My counsel already thinks I'm a joke. I don't need my right-hand men proving the point even more. I could tell both of them were still visibly extremely mad, but neither of them dared initiate anything else. I looked at Captain Park, the oldest person in the room by far and the most mature and experienced. What do you make of this? I asked, hoping I didn't sound like I was coming off as the little kid who needed his mummy to tell him what to do. But that was exactly it. Captain Park had worked with my mother, fought beside her. She would know exactly what she would do in this situation. I only follow your orders, Alpha. She spoke and I suspected she was still mad about me not letting her interrogate Crystal yesterday. This is your Alpha asking what you think we should do. Captain Park didn't respond immediately, and I knew already that I wouldn't like what she was about to say. Let's humor Soldier Diaz. She spoke, looking at Raphael briefly. I furrowed my brows in confusion. What do you mean? Captain Park sat up straighter. If you say that you think the two instances are connected, then there's a common factor, isn't there? Crystal, she meant Crystal. I already wasn't liking this. The best way to find out what these wolves really want is to dangle different things in their faces and see what they respond to. My Luna isn't a stake. We're not dangling her in front of anyone. Peter spoke. I think Captain Park has a point. My gaze snapped to him and he flinched. Might I remind you that they almost killed my brother, proving they had no regard for him. Bridget spoke. But Crystal, they haven't touched her, and I intend to keep it that way. I yelled. Tristan. Bridget spoke in a firmer voice. There's a reason they aren't hurting her. She spoke slowly in a level voice. Unless you want idiots like Raphael to continue assuming it's because she's one of them, you need to test that theory, put Crystal in front of them, let's see how they react. I looked at everyone in the room, my closest confidants, the people who advised me on a daily basis, the people I trusted the most with my life, and I couldn't help but wonder, could I trust them when it came to Crystal? 𝐿𝐻𝐵. I stared incredulously at Nana Francesca as she yelled at yet another person for not centering the centerpiece the way she wanted it. It really amazed me how she hadn't lost her voice this entire time. I hadn't expected to be here for 4 hours. I hadn't really even been useful. If anything, I was more of a destructive force than a constructive one. After Joshua had left, I couldn't do anything but move around like a lost puppy, trying to avoid Nana Francesca, who seemed determined to bring out the inner boss Luna in me. All I had succeeded in doing was embarrassing myself. Everyone had their role and were super busy moving up and down doing their jobs. I had almost tripped 3 people, almost dropped 2 boxes, and when I went to try and make conversation with Michael, he accidentally hammered his hand against a wall. So I just found a corner in the back to kind of hide out in so I wouldn't cause any injuries to myself or others. I pulled a chair aside and sat down, trying not to draw attention to myself, but of course people still stared at the lazy Luna who wasn't helping. You know what? I didn't care. I had bigger things to worry about. I took out my phone and considered calling Tristan and taking him up on his offer. I just wanted to sit him down and tell him about Roman so that I could finally get it off my chest and not feel so guilty. Hey. I looked up and saw May walk towards me with a bottled water in her hand. I brought you this. She spoke. I took the bottle and smiled at her. Thanks. It's all a bit overwhelming, isn't it? She asked, gesturing to the organized activity. A little. I shrugged. She gave me a doubtful look. A lot. I corrected myself with a sigh. I was a new pack member once too. She told me. I know how it feels to not fit into an already organized pack. I know May was originally a Reese pack wolf. One look at her reddish wolf coat told you that much. But she always seemed so organized, so put together. She blended with the Silvercrest wolves so well, it was hard to tell that she wasn't born here. May, can I ask why your family moved here? I asked, hoping I wasn't breaching a personal topic. She didn't seem to mind though. A lot of wolves got to relocate during the war. I was 12 and my family had been stationed here. It was easier to get pack membership for my family because Peter imprinted on me. She smiled when she said the last part. I couldn't help but smile as well. That's how I was supposed to look when I spoke about Tristan. My parents are hardly around though, they're diplomats, so they travel around a lot with my little sister. Don't you miss them? I asked. I don't know if I would ever want to be voluntarily separated from my parents. May gave me a smile. I see them at least once every month. And honestly, I don't think I could ever leave Peter. I thought about how Roman and I had been planning on moving far away from Woodfell after I graduated. I don't think I had been the least bit worried about leaving Tristan. In fact, I had thought it would be the best thing for all of us. May, have you ever met Van Cliff wolves? I mean, before the attack. May looked away from me and I had a feeling I had brought up something I shouldn't. Yes, was all she said in response. I wanted to ask what they were like and what had happened, but I had a feeling I shouldn't. May got up. I have to get back to work before Lady Melrose thinks I'm slacking. May spoke, forcing a smile at me. I nodded. "'Kay, sure." Before May walked away, she turned to face me. I know this is all hard on you, but the less you associate yourself with this case, the better. With that, she walked off. The less I associate myself, the better. What was that supposed to mean? This was all probably happening because of me. I was part of this whether I liked it or not. I sighed and looked down at my phone. Is this you, Ro? Are you dragging me into another one of your messes? But why would Roman be associated with Van Cliff's? Unless that's who he had been spying for. No, that was impossible. The Van Cliffs had been defeated. So was it you, Mom? Are you in trouble? But why had Roman texted me? Why did he need help? And why did he need it from me? He had no right to even talk to me again. I stared at my phone. I had been waiting so long for an explanation and now I had the chance of getting it and I was going to let it slip by. Yes, Yes, I was. Because he had lied and he had left me. I couldn't trust him. But what if he really did need my help? What if my Roman, the Roman I had known and loved, needed me? I looked at my phone, then looked around again at everyone who was busy working. Maybe I could just ask. My heart suddenly skipped a beat. What if I was too late? I was about to press the power button when I heard a hiss.
Psst, PSSSST.
I looked around until I saw a face peeking through a back door. The person opened the door further so that I could see his face. Chris. I stood up. He placed a hand on his lips and waved me over. I furrowed my brows. What was he doing? Get over here, he whispered. I sighed. I had a lot going on. Dealing with a crazy Chris isn't something I was looking forward to. I decided to humor him and walked out to meet him. The door he had been hiding behind led out to a hallway. Chris, what are you shush? He told me before looking around nervously as if someone was watching. Oh no. Had he been watching the crime channel alone again? Before I could ask, he grabbed my hand and led me down the hall to a back exit. Before I knew it, we were outside. He looked around again, then looked back at me. Okay, we're good. He spoke in relief. Okay, James Bond, what's going on with you? What are you doing here? I asked him. He suddenly narrowed his eyes at me. Why haven't you been returning any of my texts or my calls? Oh, I spoke, realizing I hadn't talked to Chris since the attack. I rubbed my temple. Look, Chris, things have been kind of hectic, I know that. He spoke. I heard about your attack and I was worried. I saw the concern on his face and I couldn't help but feel guilty. If Chris had been the one involved in something like this, I would have been worried sick. I'm sorry I didn't call you or reply to your messages. It's just that I looked at my phone. Did Roman contact you? Chris blurted out. I looked around wildly, making sure no one was around before looking back at Chris. Why would you ask me that? My first thought was Kat must have told him, because how else would he know? Chris took out his phone, which had earphones plugged into it. I know because of this. Listen to this. He spoke urgently as he gave me the buds. I looked at him in fear and confusion as I complied and put them in my ears. He pressed play and I immediately heard a familiar voice. Chris, this is Roman. Don't panic, okay? I'm only contacting you because Crystal isn't responding to me. I need you to tell her that she's in trouble. She needs to get out of Woodfell. It's not safe for her. I jumped back, causing the buds to pop out of my ear. I looked at Chris. Holy crap. My freaking sentiments exactly. I looked around, there was still no one here, but that didn't stop me from stepping closer to Chris. I clutched his arm. Please tell me you didn't reply. I spoke in a low voice. Do I look like I want to get arrested? Chris asked. So it's true. He contacted you. I sighed. I wasn't planning on getting Chris involved in this, but he had already been dragged into it. Yes, yesterday after the attack. After I found out that he freaking bugged me and has been spying on me this whole time. Chris' eyes widened. You're kidding. I wish. He put this thing called a surveillance patch on my phone case and I think has been listening to me and tracking my location. Just then something dawned on me. Roman used to get you birthday presents, right? Chris slowly nodded. Oh no, you don't think? I think we need to be as careful as possible. I thought back to all the little gifts Roman had gotten my family. What if they had been bugged as well? Chris rubbed his temple and started pacing. This is like a really scary spy movie. What did Alpha Tristan say when you told him? I should tell him as well, right? Well, I haven't exactly told Tristan yet. Chris' eyes widened even more. Why not? He yelled. Oh well. Crystal, he's the Alpha, your mate. And Roman is my boyfriend. I snapped. Was my boyfriend. I quickly corrected myself. Chris sighed and looked at me. You can't seriously be protecting him. He spoke in a softer tone. I knew that. I knew that all too well, and I still didn't understand why I was. Why didn't you go straight to the authorities, huh? I asked Chris. Because I felt like I owed it to you to tell you first. Chris said defensively. No. You did it because Roman was your friend. I countered. Chris hesitated. Roman doing what he did had affected us the most. We were a band of misfits. We understood each other in a way that others couldn't. We were there for each other. Roman always looked out for me. Chris spoke. Maybe this was me doing the same for him. He admitted quietly. Oh, trust me, I understood. I looked at Chris' phone and spoke with finality. Delete it. Chris looked up at me, stunned. What? Might I remind you that this is evidence? I grabbed the phone from Chris before he could protest. I stared at the voice note for a short while before deleting it. I then blocked the number and gave Chris his phone back. Crystal. What the heck? That could have helped. I looked up at Chris. It's not fair, Chris. He shouldn't be dragging either of us into this. Especially not you. Chris' expression softened. He put a hand on my arm. Listen, 𝐊𝐲𝐶, I know Roman hasn't exactly given us a reason to trust him of late, but we knew Roman. He cared about us and he loved you. I felt tears forming in my eyes. That Roman wasn't real. I know you don't believe that. He spoke softly. I have to, Chris, we have to. Actions speak louder than words and we all know what he did. We can't trust him. Chris looked out into the distance looking like he was in deep thought. I know you trusted him. I did too. I told him. But he showed us who he really is. We need to trust that now. And trust Tristan. Why would he warn you, Crystal? I know we shouldn't trust him, but why would he warn you if he was the one plotting against the pack? I wanted to believe it too. That maybe Roman had turned away from the people he had been spying for. I had fostered the idea that maybe Roman had been trying to come back. To come back to me. But I couldn't afford to think that way. I had already told Chris what I knew had to be true. We couldn't trust Roman. No matter how much we wanted to. Maybe he isn't the enemy he's warning me about. Chris looked confused. I sucked in a deep breath before explaining to him what really happened yesterday with the attack. How it was really Van Cleef wolves who were after me. Damn, was Chris' response. Crystal, what in the world would Van Cleefs want from you? Nothing good, I'm guessing. And you think your mom, I suspect. Uncle Victor says I'm reading into this too much, but Chris, she left me, her daughter. Took me away from my father and hasn't come back since. Uncle Victor said it himself, she wouldn't do that unless she was trying to protect me. And her scent. Why did I pick up her scent? Okay, I'm beginning to get a headache. But one thing's for sure, we're not going to figure it out. And if Van Cleefs are involved, we sure as hell shouldn't want to. I nodded. You're right. I need to talk to Tristan. I looked at the phone, deciding with finality. I need to tell him. Chris looked at me and nodded. I support you. And you're going to stay out of this. I told Chris. I put my hand on his shoulder. I am not dragging you into this mess if I can help it. You don't know what it's like. The investigations, they don't just affect you but your family too. And Lord knows the last thing I want is for you or your parents to be looked at as suspects. I could tell Chris was conflicted. He knew he couldn't afford this to reflect badly on his human mother especially. I'll tell Tristan that Roman contacted me and me alone. You need to go home and make sure you weren't bugged as well. Are you sure? He asked. I nodded. It's the right thing to do. When did our lives get so cool? I looked at him in shock. You call all this cool? I was feeling anxious and sick and scared and he thought this was cool. Yeah. You're freaking Lady Luna now. You went from an unknown loser to the second most powerful person in this pack. I almost forgot that Chris didn't know the terms of Tristan imprinting on me. And I didn't want to tell him. I trusted Chris, but I wasn't going to burden him with another of my secrets. How the hell did you manage to keep that a secret? I felt offended. First cat, now him. I can keep a secret, okay? Whatever you say, Luna. He told me. Before I could retort, he spoke. Can I ask you something? I nodded. What is it? Did Roman know? I shook my head. No, well, I mean, I didn't tell him. But since I just found out he's been spying on me, who knows? Maybe he knew all along. Chris was silent for a while before he spoke again. If it's any consolation, I don't think he was faking it. I looked at Chris, not knowing what to say. Honestly, I'd like to believe that too. Come on. I'll show you what the surveillance patch looks like so that you own what to look out for. Chris followed me back into the hall. I knew something was wrong the minute I saw my bag tilted over. I rushed to it and saw that it was open. I quickly picked it up to search it, but it too was clear immediately. I looked at Chris. It's gone.